So, in light of Trump's new proposal to start a third political party in the United States under the suggested name, the Patriot Party, it's rekindled some people's memories of the previous Patriot Party, which existed in the 1960s. So, the way that I would describe this party is that it was associated closely with the Black Panther Party. And in a similar way that, for example, Occupy, when that was a thing, occupiers sprang up all over the world, and they used that framework to address kind of local issues, but used the broad framework to sort of draw people in. That's one of that's one of my pet peeves about Megan Murphy's thing when she's like, why is there a Black Lives Matter in Canada? We have a completely different history, as though that hasn't happened with all social movements, or not all social movements, but with a lot of social movements throughout history. You will get them spread across areas, spread across different demographics, and they will take the similar name and the similar structure because one of the problems with organizing is trying to get some momentum. So when there seems to be some momentum around something, people pick it up. It's like pretty obvious. Not that there aren't problems with the Black Lives Matter movement, et cetera, but like just that thing of why would a movement from a country right next door to ours be in our country too? Seems fairly obvious. Anyway, so when the Black Panthers were a thing, there were lots of similar type organizations. One of them was the Young Lords, which was like a Latino organization. There were all sorts of even similar organizations to the Black Panthers that were just slightly different, those types of things. There was like the White Panthers, which today sounds like a white nationalist organization, but back then was essentially like hippies and like the people who would be at Occupy, and their demands were like, I can't remember them all, but free weed was one of them. So yeah, they were the college kids. It was the Panthers for the college kids, essentially. But there was a version of the Panthers for white people that actually had some class politics, which was called the Patriot Party. And the Black Panthers worked closely with them to, help them establish themselves and stuff like that. I don't know a heap about the history, but I have seen some of the documents that were like the founding, the equivalent of the 10-point plan for the Patriot Party. It was very similar to the Black Panther Party, but one of their demands, I remember, being free lumber, because I guess they're in rural areas and people need wood to stay warm. Also, just a side note, there's this video of one of the Black Panthers talking to patriots and telling them about like how they can set up their organization and that kind of thing. But he's like, weirdly touching the leg of one of the Patriots members who's quite a bit younger. Yeah, I was always like, I don't know. I guess I'm probably going to have to edit that out. I'm not really sure what the point of including that was, but it is out there if anyone can find that. So anyway, the Patriot Party was a thing, and now these liberals have discovered that Trump's going to call his thing the Patriot Party, and they're like, oh, did you know that the Patriot Party was a socialist organization and they worked with the Black Panthers? They obviously find this highly amusing. But what is weird is one of the most famous pictures of the Black Panthers with the Patriots is there's a photo of what looks like speakers at maybe a conference, and there's Free the Panthers banners behind them. But there's also a giant Confederate flag, because the Confederate flag was the logo of the Patriot Party, which today would cause a quote-unquote anti-racist's head to explode. But it's because the Panthers weren't obsessed with the purity politics of stupid bourgeois culture wars and were instead focused on class. There's this quote by Stokely Carmichael, which says, if a white man wants to lynch me, that's his problem. But if he's got the power to lynch me, that's my problem. Racism is not a question of attitude, it's a question of power. Often the quote will stop there, but what he goes on to say, which is much more illuminating, is racism gets its power from capitalism, Thus, if you're anti-racist, whether you know it or not, you must be anti-capitalist. The power for racism, the power for sexism, comes from capitalism, not an attitude. So for most liberals who are thinking that attitudes are what cause racism, they would look to the bourgeois left, AOC, etc., and be like, oh, well, she's got the best attitudes, but she's pro-capitalist. The whole party's pro-capitalist. So that's why their efforts never get anywhere. Whereas the Black Panthers saw these impoverished white people and were like, we have the same interests. Who cares what their favorite fucking color is or their favorite flag? You know, probably everyone doesn't find like a panther to be an inspiring symbol, but that's not really what matters. And what's interesting about this is that this kind of cross-racial coalition is the kind of coalition that Bernie had the first time he ran, because he hadn't bought into the identity politics stuff yet. And so it was really class-based. And so a lot of people who find that woke shit intolerable were able to listen to him and go like, yeah, okay, free healthcare. That's materially improving my existence. Who gives a shit about the socialist thing? I can live with that. But then the second time he ran, he teamed up with AOC and all the other associated woke liberal idiots, and he did much worse the second time, even though one of the big problems people were saying the first time was like, oh, he just didn't have enough time to get name recognition. And he had massive name recognition the second time, but did worse electorally because he played into the identity politics nonsense.